Jose Knighton led me to the snake in March 1994. We hiked together for many years and thousands of miles. The snake. Seasons of the Sacred Sky. I know that sounds pretentious, but what the hell. Ancient astronomers used art, lore, ritual, and rites to commemorate the orderly nature of the cosmos, notably at equinoxes and solstices. Archaeoastronomy is a common term for this, but I prefer to use the term ancient astronomy because archaeoastronomy sounds pretty pretentious too. Ancient astronomers and artists used structures and rock art panels to create astronomical markers at the snake site. Most of the art here is by the basket maker people, and they lived in the area between 1000 BC and 1000 AD. Other Moab rock art styles include Archaic, before 1 AD, Fremont and Anasazi after 700 AD, and Ute Navajo and Paiute. Astronomical marker can be used to use rock art, structure, topography, or include all of these. I call the astronomical markers at the snake the Mighty One, the Warrior Panel, the Beanhole, Kokopelli Rising, the Stone Box, and of course, the snake. The snake site is in a rugged section of the Behind the Rocks area near Moab, Utah. There we can see my friend Dan Miller going down. The snake is at the bottom of that cleft and around the corner on the left. The site has several astronomical displays, as I pointed out. The upper ruin, the warrior panel, the beanhole, and the snake. Here's looking at it from another angle. These three sites are used in at least 6 different astronomical displays. The upper ruin was where I first identified the first display. There is the upper ruin and an arrow pointing west there. The upper ruin is about 12 feet wide, and the pictures of the Mighty One and the Kokopelli Rising were taken from this spot where the tripod is standing. First marker I'll identify is what I call the Mighty One. It's an equinox marker. It only happens 2 days a year. I named this rock tower the Mighty One, and it dominates the skyline. I named all these panels. The snake was pretty easy, though people call it the solstice snake a lot now. From the upper ruin, the equinox sun sets where the Mighty One and the horizon meet. The following sequence taken in the fall of 2009. From the upper ruin, the sun sets here on only 2 days of the year, the equinoxes. Here are some other images from the fall. 1994, 95, and 96. And here's an image from September 2014. Close to the upper ruin, there is a panel I call the warrior panel, because of those two guys with their spears there. The warrior panel is next to the upper ruin, and it marks the equinox in the morning and the afternoon. This next picture is of the equinox in the morning. The sun forms a triangle of light that intersects the spiral and the meandering line. This is the only marker in the morning that I've been able to figure out. And the following sequence is from the morning of September 22nd, 2009. A little after 11 in the morning, you can see the light coming down towards the spirals till it forms a distinct triangle, touches the intersection of the meandering line and the outer circle. This is the only panel I know that uses both the morning and afternoon light to form astronomical markers. Now we'll take a look at the afternoon light at the warrior panel. And there are several markers that appear in the afternoon that are quite distinctive. This sequence is from September 22nd, 2009. A wall 10 feet to the west forms the shadow. As the sun moves north and sets, the shadow moves towards the panel, and it lines up with a half circle and the dot at the end of the meandering line. The shadow lines up with a meandering line, and aligning glyphs along a shadow's edge is a common design motif on this and many other panels. The shadow continues to move across the panel towards the spirals and the concentric circles. And as the shadow meets the next set of glyphs, it touches 5 artistic points at once. It matches the large circle above splits the smaller circle below and touches each apex of the wavy vertical line. There it hits 5 different spots at the same moment. And there's Seth Wilsey. He's been one of my collaborators on this over the year. The shadow continues to move, and then it intersects the concentric circles and touches the wavy line again. As the light leaves the center, the shadow touches the first warrior on the body and foot, or you might say body and soul. The shadow engulfs the first warrior just as it touches the second warrior on his spear. As the light leaves the concentric circles, the shadow comes down and matches the second warrior's body and touches the small circle down below. The shadow splits the second warrior and points at the center of the small circle. As the light leaves the second warrior, the shadow splits the small circle in half. The energy of a storyline can be continued across a panel by transferring it from one glyph to another using the passage of the light. And here's a good example of transference. As the concentric circles no longer come into play, the second warrior does. That is the moment of the transference. I learned that technique at the Goose panel. I talk about that in another show. There are several winter solstice markers at the Snake site. The sun's southern migration across the horizon stops at the winter solstice, and the sun stands still. Because of this, solstice displays can be observed for a little longer than a week. Winter solstice displays can be seen at the upper ruin and in a small cave that Jose named the Beanhole. This is the solstice, and that is far to the left as the sun will go. So let's talk about the Beanhole. The Beanhole is a small cave about 50 feet away from the warrior panel. And you can see it there where the yellow dot is. The cave goes in about 10 feet, turns left, then goes 10 more feet. A crack penetrates the cliff at the back of the cave, so there's a crack to the right of the Beanhole entrance. There it is. The setting sun casts a beam of light through the crack, and the beam goes through the wall into the back of the cave. The winter solstice sunset inside the Beanhole on December 18th, 1994. In a few minutes, the light pinches out, and just down below, down in the lower left-hand corner, there are 2 human figures pecked into the wall. Both figures are walking to the left, And the figure on the left is indistinct. It may be playing a flute. And the figure to the right is definitely carrying a large basket. And the idea of a large basket comes into play in another winter solstice observation that I will mention in a minute. There are structural remains at the mouth of the cave, and at one time there may have been steps going up, a threshold and a wall, or some sort of hanging at the entrance. There are large charcoal deposits nearby. Perhaps rocks were heated and passed up to the cave where they were used to create a smoke or steam bath, a place for visions and oracles. The vaginal shape invites speculation concerning female rights and magic. The following sequence is of the winter solstice light inside the back of the cave, December 21st, 2008. And this is from 5:43 to 5:45, a 2-minute stretch. And there is the light coming through the crack. There is the light starting to pinch out. And finally, just a little bitty glimmer of light in the back of the cave at 5:44. 5:44:26. It takes about 2 minutes to crawl out of the cave, and I look to the west, and there is the solstice sunset from the entrance of the cave. The formation and the timing are impeccably convenient. The upper ruin is affiliated with several winter solstice markers, and I call one of them Kokopelli Rising. And it is the only star display that I am aware of in the Moab area. From the upper ruin, shortly after dark, Taurus and Orion can be seen rising in the east. You can see the face of Taurus at the top of the circle and Orion's body just below that. Or maybe you see a flute player and someone with a basket on her back. Kokopelli Rising starts about 8:30 when Betelgeuse, the brightest star in Orion, appears in the bottom of the slot at the left where that blue dot is. A few minutes later, Rigel, the second brightest star in Orion, appears to the right of a tower across the canyon. Then what we call Orion's belt clears the rock fin and appears in the middle of the canyon. You can see these three features for 3 minutes, and then the display ends when Betelgeuse disappears behind the tower on the left. The following sequence goes from 8:25 to 8:35. First, Betelgeuse rises in the bottom of the narrow slot to the left. You can see, watch for it. There it is. Next, Rigel clears the rock tower on the other side of the canyon. There's the spot, and there's Rigel coming into view. Orion's belt becomes visible in the center of the canyon. There it is, coming out from the other side of that rock fin. So there's Betelgeuse, the belt, and Rigel split behind by the rocks, and then Betelgeuse on the left disappears after about 3 minutes, I think. It is easy to see a bent-backed basket carrier with a basket on the back. This possible flute player and basket carrier are only a few feet away, and maybe they illustrate what's going on up there in the sky on the winter solstice. Well, they wouldn't have called it Orion and Taurus. They would have had new names, different names for these constellations. Betelgeuse, Rigel, and the belt appear together, like I said, for 3 minutes. Many agricultural societies have myths about a deity who dies, is dismembered, buried, and reborn. Basket maker Indians began growing corn in the region about 3,000 years ago. They were the first agriculturalists here. And I wonder, could Kokopelli Rising split apart by the rocks illustrate the dismemberment phase of this ancient and widespread mythological motif? Hell if I know. But I like the idea. This is speculation, friends. But what is not speculation is another winter solstice observation that deals with the upper ruin. That is the ruin from which I took the pictures for both Kokopelli Rising and the Great One, the Mighty One. The upper ruin is 12 feet wide, and there is a stone box to the right, about 12 feet away. It's right where that blue dot is. There's a box there. The stone box is about 18 inches square. There in the lower right-hand corner. There's the blue dot on the right is where the stone box is in comparison to the ruin, and a shadow from across the canyon covers the upper ruin and the stone box in the winter solstice morning. The tip of this rock fin across the canyon forms that shadow from that point. Spire's shadow covers the stone box and touches the upper ruin on 2 tangents. This is a deliberate and conscious design choice. The stone box, and there it is, like I said, about 18 inches high. The tip of the solstice shadow covers the stone box, but the shadow does not touch a pile of stacked rocks a few feet away. These features, one in shade and one in light, may have been part of the same winter solstice rites and ceremonies. The upper ruin and the stone box are part of a winter solstice sundial. There is only one summer solstice display at the snake site as far as I know, and that is the snake. About 11 a.m. on June 17th, 1997, Kyle Ross and I were walking up to the snake. From a short distance away, below, I saw that the snake was still in shade. The light had not come over the cliff to light it. I hurried up to the hill, got to the snake, and this is what I saw. Kyle arrived 2 minutes later and saw it looking like this. He was skeptical about my claim of seeing a perfect arrowhead shape, and I don't blame him. I returned the next day with Kyle, Jose, and Devin Vaughn, who first had the idea that there might be astronomy at this site. The snake is below the green dot and behind that boulder there. About 11 a.m., the sun rises over the top of the hill and casts oblique rays on the wall, and a curved conchoidal fracture where the snake is catches that light. There's the snake to the left, the light coming over the wall, and yours truly taking a selfie. The oblique light catches the left side of a shallow conchoidal fracture, then it moves across the wall. The following sequence was taken on June 24th, 2009, starting at 11:10 a.m. And there you can see the first little glimmer of light on the rock just to the left of the snake, and it will spread across and form that shape. The snake is about 20 feet long if you measure the whole thing. We don't know who made it, but it's pretty. The snake, the light is perfect now, and then a minute later it starts to morph out of shape. And by a minute after its perfect presentation, the shape is lost. From the time the light catches the edge of the fracture until it makes this shape is under 3 minutes. The complete shape lasts for 30 seconds. Many rock art traditions have deity images that use this shape. It also resembles a projectile point and is often referred to as an arrowhead. But my preference is to call it a god. The ancient peoples would recognize the phallic appearance of this formation. This male characteristic and the vaginal shape of the beanhole may be complementary components of the site's mythology. We also see that near the birthing rock, another show. But that is a topic for another day. This show discusses 6 astronomical displays that can be seen from the snake site. They are at the equinox, the mighty one. Also at the equinox, the warrior panel. At the winter solstice, the beanhole. Also at the winter solstice, Kokopelli rising. I don't use that term Kokopelli anymore, but that's what I named it when I started my work, so I kept it. The winter solstice has the stone box being occluded by the shadow. And of course, in the summer solstice, the snake. There are at least 4 other displays here, several panels and some structures that I did not discuss. But one of the reasons I wanted to make this show was to show that there is more going on than just the snake. When the word got out that the snake was there, people got excited, but they did not bother to learn these other displays. Other displays in the area that I discuss elsewhere are Hidden Valley, the Moab Canyon, the goose panel, where the goose lays a silver egg at dawn, Hell Roaring Canyon, where the sun goes behind the South Kachina and shines through the eye hole and sees you. And to learn more about these sites, you could take a thumb drive to the library and ask for my rock art stuff, because I put it all there, or you can search around on this website. And this was a dated show there. The snake is a complex site with world-class characteristics, and the world knows about it. We did not make a concerted effort to keep it quiet, and the word got out, and now there are up to 100 people every summer who are going up there to take pictures and pay their respects to the ancients. As they did thousands of years ago, people will come marvel at the work and vision of these ancient astronomers and artists. Clearly, the site needs protection from ignorant and malicious actors. How do you allow people to come and protect it from malign influences is a matter for discussion. But it is not a discussion I know of that anybody has started yet. One might think that Bureau of Land Management would be interested, but they apparently are not. And here's a picture of me, June 18th, 1997, and that was the second time I saw that light, the day after I discovered it.